Okay, let's start. Opportunities in the gem market beyond the big three. This is quite a strong statement, actually, because when you look at gemstones in general, you have hundreds of different varieties and species out there. Some are very well known, some are not so well known, but becoming more and more popular. And this popularity started in our modern market probably about 8 to 10 years ago, when gemstone prices gone really, really high up. People wanted to get something out of the classic ones, you know, the big three and diamonds and so on. And there were times that we were lecturing about them as exotics and unusual stones and so on. But today, if you look all over the market, they're not exotics, they're not unusual. People like unusual, people like different. So I wanted to bring out all the different ones together, even the ones that a few decades ago we considered boring, not so gem quality and so on. But when you put it all together, when you look at something as gem quality, you can actually make it a gem. It's quite possible to do that. Well, one of the reasons we're going into this is all about the changing attitude of the new generation of buyers. People don't buy jewelry anymore just because it is jewelry or it is something symbolic, but new generation of buyers are actually buying jewelry for stories. They want to have a story with piece of jewelry or gemstone, and they want to know where it came from, if it is going to be traced back. Do they have a meaning? Does it actually mean anything to the people who mined them or to the people who made them? Is there a story behind the designer's idea? So it's all about the stories that they're buying. Therefore, traceability, ethical jewelry concepts are growing and they're becoming more and more important. I wrote a lengthy article about that in the last Gem Guide issue, actually, from a gemologist appraiser's point of view, because there are many things in that area that people need to look into. So I highly recommend that, to look at it from gemologist's point of view. But again, it's all about stories and gemstones. And I was reminded that actually last night, I made a very colorful friend last night. Elise is here. And she reminded me of Maya Angelou's beautiful words about be a rainbow on somebody's cloud. And this is all about rainbow colors here. So hopefully some of these gemstones would make a rainbow for some of your clients. So you can be a rainbow on somebody's cloud. So thanks for that, Elise. What do we have in nature? Everything. Nature provides us incredible varieties. And these have been used for thousands of years. This particular group of colored gemstones, and they are mainly in the translucent opaque group, all American gemstones, for example. This is one of the reasons I'm talking about stories. People want to buy a particular country's stone. People want to buy a particular culture stone. So all these gemstones, for example, whether you consider some of them gem quality or not, are actually from the United States. And it is also appealing to fashion market. They are more affordable. They are presenting different opportunities. Designers get more interested in with different shapes and natural formations and so on. So that's one of the reasons that you would get natural gem materials almost endless. Then we have alternative gem materials. We can never deny that. This photo was taken in Organto show a few years ago. Stuart was there and looking at all the alternative gem materials that the new designer generation were using. And this is actually ceramic with gold. So it is completely man-made. And it actually looks quite natural, but it's not. And if you think that new unusual gem materials are becoming in fashion and we're the new people discovered that, it is not true. Let me give you some examples. Here, these beads, older than ancient Egypt. They're actually from Nubia, and they're quartz beads glazed by blue material so that they would look like blue gems. So whatever they had there in their nature was basically plain quartz, and they wanted to add color to it. And a few thousand years ago, they created that. These beads, mainly carnelian, I actually worked in that excavation. This culture, Urartian culture, belongs to about 6,000 years ago in eastern Anatolia, between Turkey and Iran, today's border. And all the other colorful materials, like the blue ones, are colored by cobalt, and they're glass. So alternative material idea is not an idea that we have as modern people. It was there for thousands of years. Human beings like different colors, made sure that they added them to their repertoire if they wanted to use it for whatever reason, because we can only speculate why certain colors and why certain type of jewelry is used in the past. But moving forward, for natural materials, obviously I will talk about color, but let's talk about some gemstones that, say, 15, 20 years ago, we wouldn't even consider as a gemstone. Let's talk about black diamonds. Let's talk about unusual stones. This is one of my favorites. This is actually black slate, and there are pyrite inclusions in it. And it's basically as is, taken and fashioned as little as possible to be put on gold jewelry. And it's very popular. This material here is black coral. Again, beautiful pattern, nice combination of colors. Black diamonds. Great alternative, putting together with white. So all of a sudden you have alternatives, not so colorful, but it used to be considered industrial, not so good, and so on. Now today, we have those black stones. Let's talk about whites. Generally, the older versions. This is one of my favorite jewelry pieces. It's a large moonstone, again combined with diamonds. And of course, thousands of years of generation of especially Chinese culture jade, and that is ice jade, combined with moonstone there. So we have alternatives, and they don't have to be new, they don't have to be all colorful, but there are they. And then, now with new fashion, this is new, it's all gray. Think about one of the most quickly becoming popular gemstones in the market. It is gray spinel. It is amazing in the last 3 years how much of it became available. It's not that they didn't exist, it's just people didn't pay attention to that. And then all of a sudden they are very popular. We have so many gem dealers we speak to, and they say they would never thought in a million years they would be selling gray gemstones, because they were always dealing with high-end jewelry and high-end gemstones, but now they are selling that. And this particular company, Jeff is a great photographer, he named them as platinum silvers, spinels, and they sell very well. You can see them in very high-end jewelry right now, and they are beautiful. And as you can see, there are different shades of them. I'm not going to make the joke. But they are very, very low saturated, different colored spinel. So you can see a little bit of purple, a little bit of violet, and a little bit of pink in them, but that's generally going into the as gray as possible, almost black colors again. So, black, white, and gray, although by color, you don't even consider them as color. You might think that they're boring, but there are lots of alternatives out there, including them. I couldn't pass cultured pearls while I'm considering the alternative materials in different colors. When we think about color, we don't actually think about pearls much. We think about, all the other colored gemstones and so on, but pearls, especially cultured pearls in freshwater category, are becoming more and more attractive, more and more colorful, and this particular group is amazing. These what they are named as Edison pearls are probably the roundest and the largest that Chinese freshwater market can produce. And these ones are changing from 18 millimeter to 24 millimeter. Colors are natural. They're rivaling almost Tahitian colors. So this group, as you can see, This is actually a 14 millimeter Tahitian at the back. And obviously, they demand a certain premium. However, when you compare these to a similar looking South Sea or Tahitian material, you're going to see the difference in pricing. They're literally at a fraction. So that's another alternative that I had to add. But color is the main attraction. So that's what I want to talk about today. And I want to show you different color stones. So I'm going to get a little geeky here. I promise this is the only graphic. This is basically how color works. It is very important for us to understand how color works because it's an enigma. I've been doing color research in the last 8-9 years. I'm so engrossed in it. It's amazing because it is an enigma for neuroscientists. It is an enigma for social scientists. Anthropologists thought color was something universal. They thought that every color had a name in all languages. And then they discovered that that wasn't the case. There are actually cultures living in certain areas of Amazon extracting pigments from nature and natural dyes and using them in textiles and so on. They don't have a single name for color. In their language, there isn't such a question as what color is this? They only express color within a context. So when anthropologists ask them what red would be, they couldn't ask a question, so they actually put red color chips. And wherever the red color chips was put, the color was described accordingly. If it was in between green leaves, they would describe it as a fruit. If it was on the ground, it would be described as blood. The word pink didn't exist until the 19th century in English language. It was all related to rose. And funny enough, in Middle Eastern languages, regardless of their origin, rose still represents pink. So again, it's a cultural, this is my example. I'm Turkish, so when you say olive in English, what do you think? Yellowish green, dark? In Turkish, it is only black. So it depends on the cultural context. That's a different thing. In neuroscience, what puzzles a scientist is this: it's not measurable. We can describe color like this as a physical phenomenon. It's a form of energy. Where it comes from, we're actually quite limited as human eye to see what we can see with that. And even that is given us millions of colors because human eye can see a lot of colors and separate it. But there is no measure of how we see it. We describe a particular color, say red. You're looking at a red apple because we know that it is red. This is what we are taught. But there is no way of explaining what we're seeing when we call it red. Does that make sense to you? Because there is no way of measuring. So that's a very important thing to understand. That's why color communication is a big issue. So if you think that color communication is an issue in all gemology and gemological terminology, it is not a thing. What did they do? What did the modern world create for that? Catalogs and color systems. Think about Mansell, think about Pantone, think about your textile catalogs. Because it is easier to compare color with a sample and name it, therefore you can communicate through that. So in colored world, when we have all these colored gemstones, people will take whatever they take from it. And it is important for you to understand, for example, your market, what color is more appealing. I know in Northern European countries, cooler colors are quite popular, like the light blues and lighter greens and so on. But if you go to Middle East or Far East, red comes first. It needs to be the hottest and the brightest red possible. It's in their culture, again, because it's related to the context, not what it is, basically. We have all these colors on what we call color wheel, and Munsell was the first artist and a scientist to explain color in a three-dimensional context. Once you understand color as a three-dimensional context, it is easier to place it within that what we call color space. So it is important to explain that to your client when you're explaining the color too. And that's how human eye works, actually. We see a lot of differences within red and purple, but not so many in green and blue. And the main thing here is the light source, because we see color differently under different light sources. So when you can see very, very similar variations in blue and green under any light source, that varies a lot more with reds and oranges and sometimes yellows. But we see more variations, and that's actually the real color space or the color sphere as we can explain that. That's the technical part. I'm done with it. The reason we look at gemstones because they are the rarest and the purest form of minerals. Of course, there are non-mineral gemstones out there, but what we are fascinated by are basically the colored gemstones, and opal is a perfect example. I admit to that. Obviously, this is from a museum, and this is one of the best opals you can ever see. But just, it's all there, all in one gemstone. And that's what nature provides us. That's the beauty of it. And other colored gemstones, but let's go back to history a bit. I know some of you are familiar with Belperon jewelry from 1930s. She was very confident about her designs. She never signed them. She said, my jewelry should reflect what I am and who I am, therefore I will never sign them. And she used one of the most ancient materials here with the most beautiful sapphires and diamonds. This is blue chalcedony. Blue chalcedony is probably one of the earliest gem materials that is used from thousands of years ago. If you look at prehistoric beads and seals and so on, you'll see blue chalcedony on a regular basis. Another one, jadeite, I just listened to great Richard Hughes's lecture on Wednesday morning. Jadeite has a minimum 8,000 years of culture, and it's still popular today. And that's what we have. So again, alternatives are not new. We have it. We've always had it. Lapis, another great example. It's one of the oldest gem materials that has been revered, not by just the ancient Egyptians, but many other cultures, not only because of its gem quality, looking and beautiful, attractive structure, but also it was a great source for blue pigment. The ultramarine color that was extracted from lapis lazuli was sold the same. Basically, it demanded the same value as say, gold, the same weight, same gold, up until the synthetic ultramarine could be produced. So that's the color that we were in. And here, dear friend of ours, Robert, actually provided this beautiful picture. I love this. I mean, this is all rough, not even polished as it comes. And then next to a beautiful sapphire. So you have those combinations. Here again, one of your very, very ancient alternative. Nephrite. Well, most people think that there is dark green or maybe the older Chinese culture that would be the mutton fat, that white one. And some people find nephrite a little dull and not so attractive. Well, take this one. It's a cat's eye. It's one of the most attractive nephrites that you can get hold of. It's out there. Next to it, rhodochrosite. We are always thinking that pink, opaque material with white banding, attractive, old carving material, and so on. But if you come across such a rhodochrosite, it is just breathtaking. I've seen this stone in flesh. It's almost 22 karat. Absolutely no inclusion in it whatsoever. Beautifully cut. It was just a dream to watch with the color and everything. Good photograph, but doesn't justice what it is in real life. Take another one, blue zircon. It's becoming very popular. The Cambodian blue zircon is especially very popular these days, but it's been around for thousands of years again. And at some point, it was the first alternative to diamond because of its fire. So always remember that they were alternatives, not just today. Peridot, tanzanite, one old, one new alternative, I have to say. Tanzanite is one of the newest discoveries in gemology. As we know, it was made more popular in the 1960s by Tiffany's and became a new variety. Beautiful blue-purple variety of zoisite. Peridot, on the other hand, is a very, very old stone. I have tested Hellenistic large peridot pieces put in Hellenistic jewelry, probably from Pakistan, Afghanistan area. When you think about the size and the color of those, they were just beautiful. They've been around. It's been around, and it's a very, very nice stone. It's one of those stones that you would damage if you tried to heat treat it, for example. So if you're really into figuring out the treatments. I don't want to get into treatments, but one thing I want to tell you, every gemstone has a different potential for different treatment techniques, but one thing you must always remember, it doesn't matter what it is. If there is any fissures and fractures reaching the surface, it's going to be a good candidate for fracture filling. So do not dismiss anything as non-treated. You know, people say, oh, but spinels are not treated, peridots are not treated. Every stone can be treated. It depends on what kind of treatment you're looking at. And if you're looking at fracture filling, it's available for everything. And it's an easy thing to do. So we have seen, actually, some fracture-filled peridots, but still a good alternative out there. Sphene. It's funny. Gemologists like sphene, mineralogists like titanite because it is the name. Sphene is an old name for titanite. It was actually dismissed by the Mineralogical Society, but we still like that. One of the reasons we love it, it's got this incredible fire. So you just look at the stone, it's just burning from inside. You see all those beautiful fiery colors coming out of it. A little soft, but definitely a great gemstone to have around. Fluorite. Becoming more and more popular. 10, 15 years ago, we were looking at all these carved bowls out of fluorite and attractive colors and so on. But today, there's so many faceted fluorites out there because it's such a great potential. Obviously, it's soft. It is brittle because it's got 4 directional cleavage, and it's not a good idea to put it on a piece of ring or jewelry that will be around your hand that might be just damaged all the time. But these are only a few colors that you can get on fluorite. It can be any color, depending on where it came from. So that's one of the other very popular alternatives in the market today. Now, spinel. I'm so glad it's coming back. Spinel was dismissed as an alternative for many, many years. Today, it is its own gemstone, with lots of different alternatives of colors and different locations and so on. There is a little bit of scare in terms of heat treatment, but it's not prevalent and it can be detectable by labs. So I don't look at it as a problem at this point. But my message about spinel is always its beauty, because it has a higher dispersion than sapphire. When you actually take exact looking colored spinels and let's say that you have a blue spinel and you have a blue sapphire, same size, same color, you're going to see spinel just full of life compared to sapphire because it's got higher dispersion. It will give you a little bit more fire. And it's been around forever. And the certain localities like Mahenge in Africa will produce one of the most popular spinels. And this is one of the best examples here. Different colors. By the way, not all blue spinels are cobalt spinel. You know, people have that idea. All these stones you're looking at that some blue in it has got cobalt, but there is a particular level of cobalt and certain measurement in it that makes it a cobalt spinel. So as far as I know, AGL is working on that project, and you will get the better explanation of it. But it requires a certain spectrum to be called a cobalt spinel. Otherwise, it exists almost in every bluish colored spinel. Garnet. I mean, there's no way that I could ignore garnets while I'm talking about colored gemstones. People who know me know that I'm a little obsessed. And I'm not going to start with the classic. There are classic examples. Most people think that garnet is just boring, dark red, and cheap. And no, stop there. There are not. We have, of course, garnets that are really dark and not so clean and so on, but they've been used for thousands and thousands of years, not as gemstones only, but as abrasives. Then anything larger and bigger was used as beads. They still are. And then you have garnet seals, because garnet is a very nice gemstone that it is durable enough, but it's not too hard. So it was so good for carving. There's so many carved garnet seals around. And if you look at, I know one of the researchers in British Museum, she calls it a garnet millennia, from the first century to the 10th century. The main gemstones used in many different cultures, especially affected by Hellenistic culture, were all garnets. And the sources were it must be amazing, because we're looking at really, really large pieces, all carved and used as seals. So if you ever go to British Museum in London, make sure that you look at some of those samples, because they're really, really impressive. And the colors are impressive too. And if you think that ancients only knew about red garnets, that wasn't the case. Hessonite from Sri Lanka, the yellow garnets were actually used a lot. I have seen a Neolithic example myself, a seal, beautiful, light yellow hessonite, that the museum actually thought it was citrine, so it was classified under citrines. But you can see the luster coming out of it as a garnet, so there's no way of mistaking it. So today, we're looking at outside commercial grade of garnets, many different colors. Garnet actually has proven to be more colorful than we thought. There's almost every color in garnet, and people used to say, even when I first started gemology, oh, garnet has all colors except blue. And then the color change garnets were discovered, and now they have a blue tinge as well. So we're not going to see maybe sapphire blue in them, but there's definitely a group of garnets that might show blue in under white light. So rhodolite is one of the most popular colors. Rhodolite is a pyropalmandine with a purple tinge to it. And when they get cleaner and larger, they're becoming more and more popular. Because they're becoming so popular, overall, all garnet varieties we're talking about here with new discoveries and so on, the prices are going up. People are actually surprised why garnets could be so expensive. Well, they are beautiful, they are rare, and they are large. They are still a great, affordable group of gemstones compared to many other same colored gemstones. So I don't like them to call alternatives, but if you want to do that, Stuart always says that garnets are today's trade's darlings. Every gem dealer that we know will have some garnet in their collection. So starting with those rhodolites, and there are lots of varieties under them, you have all these purple alternatives, and I will come to another purple one at the end of some of the slides. We're also looking at all the phenomenal garnets. We have the cat's eyes and the star garnets are quite common, but color change or color shift garnets are quite common. And this is actually a color shift in pyrope. We're not looking at the color change garnet here. Look at the difference. Look at the beauty of it. And it also obviously is dependent on how it's cut too. The other beautiful thing that we've been observing in the market these days, people spend more time and effort on color stone gem cutting these days compared to 10, 20 years ago. When they realized that diamond cut grade being excellent was the most selling one, and then the color can be actually improved by better color, a better cut in a color gemstone, people started literally raising the quality barrier a little bit about gem cutting. So we have actually much better cut stones in the market today in color stone group of gems compared to, say, 15, 20 years ago. Let's say that the buyers, not just the consumers, but the end retailers and so on, are not satisfied by just commercial cuts, just for its weight. They want to see better cut in order to express the stone in a better way. So these stones are cut very well in order to express their color. Spessartine, in 2 different localities, slightly 2 different colors, and there are many varieties. That's the beauty of it. Within the same group, you have so many different tones and saturations and so on, and one is a really beautiful orangey red, the other is a really warm, beautiful yellow. Another one, this is more on the brownish side, mandarin. Why is it different than the other spessartine? It needs to be pure orange. You don't want any modifier. If you want to call a garnet mandarin, it needs to be pure orange. So that's the varietal definition for that. Another group of mandarins. It's just stunning. Oh, my little favorite one. Garnets can be black, and actually the most common ones are black. Andradite it is, and then if it is just pure black, it's melanite. Andradite is the species name. And there is a particular group of andradites. One group is from Mexico, the other is from Japan. They have rainbow iridescence to them, so they're called rainbow garnets. And they are stunning, as you can see. As they are, as crystals or maybe a little bit of polished surface, they don't require any faceting, a very, very attractive alternative. And of course, one of the classic ones, it's as a demantoid. This is actually Namibian, not typical Russian demantoid. The only heat-treated garnet we know is actually Russian demantoid. It is detectable, but we know that it's been done and published for a long time, and the purpose for it is to remove the yellowish tinge from it so that it would be more attractive green. But anything other than that, so far, samples from Namibia, for example, have not been detected with any heat treatment. This is the beautiful Russian garnet color, demantoid color we're talking about, and it is even more prized if there is a horsetail inclusion in it. So, do you all think that horsetail inclusion only is in Russian demantoid? There are samples from Canada has horsetail inclusions too, because they are coming from asbestos mines too. So, again, geology doesn't recognize geography. If it happened in one part of the world, it's going to happen somewhere else too. That's how nature works. So certain things about country of origin with inclusions only should be very, very carefully thought. And the other beautiful green garnet group, Savorite. It's a grossular garnet. And obviously this particular group is quite high in caratage. When I was working in trade 20 years ago, if we saw anything over 2 carats in Savorite group, we would be very excited about it. Today you can actually get hold of really high quality and slightly bigger stones. Again, it is not the most commonly produced size, but these are the best examples from British Savorite, and especially Scorpion Mine produced the most incredible Savorites. Beautiful, deep green, very clean, very attractive, full of life Savorite. And when they're not as green, we like to call them mint garnets. They're minty. They have that really nice tinge to them. I don't normally go by trade color names, but I really like the word mint. I think it's representative enough. It's not misleading. Same applies to mint tourmalines. There are tourmalines that are really light colored, are called as mint, because they have that really nice tinge to them, slightly bluish green, and really representative of mint color. And these are the same thing, but because they are lighter, they're not called Savorite, but mint garnets. And this one is a great example again, with a very nice cut. Molaya. This and a similar one, the color shift, are actually pyrospessartine combination. So color shift, color change happens within that group a lot, and they are incredible. This, if it didn't have the brownish tinge to it, and some good examples actually don't, they could rival beautiful paparazzi colors. It's one of my most favorite, but obviously it has a color shift, so nothing other than those peachy colors to be compared to paparazzi. But it's incredible that how light those colors are, because most people don't think that garnets can come in lighter tones. They do. There are actually colorless ones too. Rare, but there are, like these. Smalley garnet, it's bright yellow. And that leuco garnet, rare, granted, all collector's stone, it's just pure white, no color. And the purple garnet. This is again in pyropalmandine group. It has been so popular in the last 5-6 years. It's everywhere, that beautiful purple color that is just stunning with the luster of garnet and so on. We don't know the output, if it's going to carry on for so long, but it's been around for a while. Many years ago, I had a client. She would wear nothing but purple, everything, from her shoes to her jewelry, not a single color. I don't know how she lived that way. I don't know how she could get training shoes, for example, in purple. But those days, the only alternatives she had were amethyst and sapphire, and she didn't like amethyst. It was good for the jeweler. So I'm sure she would be very happy to see that there are purple garnets out there. See, here's your story, here's your color, here's your client again. Just watch what they want to wear. Tourmaline, of course, if we're talking about different color stones, and we can, every single gemstone that I'm mentioning here can actually be a lecture subject for, I don't know, 2 hours minimum. And tourmaline is one of them. Tourmaline is one of the most complicated and fascinating gemstones that we have. It's such an interesting crystal that it can grow in color zones, both vertically and horizontally. You can have all the different colors literally occurring on the same crystal, which makes it a multicolored tourmaline and so on. And it is commonly found in many different countries, but when it comes in really nice large transparent crystals that are basically the most popular ones. Look at this one. This is almost 28 karat pure green. One of the beautiful features of tourmaline is eye visible pleochroism. So when you have a well-cut tourmaline in those sizes, it is impossible to miss that. Look at those both beautiful blue-green and yellowish-green colors all at the same time. Rubellite. This was sold as ruby alternative for a very, very long time. So much so that the price has just gone so high. Thankfully, it corrected itself. It went back to a little bit more affordable levels. But your typical dark, saturated, purplish red color in tourmaline is definitely rubellite. Be aware that most of them are actually irradiated, not natural colors. If you think that tourmalines are not treated in some way or the other, think again. Greens and blues and most Paraibos are heat treated. And then you have rubellite definitely irradiated, depending on the location or the dealer, of course, and both are detectable. But thinking that, oh, well, this is such a great color and I don't think it is treated, think again. And again, remember the fracture filling situation. We have seen Paraibo tourmalines at $100,000 level per carat price with fracture filling. So it is not an unusual thing to see. It is very easy to detect that. Just like you detect fracture filling in diamond, do the same test. A little bit of light, definitely lower magnification, watch the flash color. That's a very straightforward test. That's a very, very practical test to do. Also, just think about it from your own sake. If you are doing, say, take-in for jewelry, cleaning and so on, if the stone is fracture filled, it's going to get damaged, and taking it for granted that a tourmaline or a garnet might not be treated that way might be actually a problem. So it's always a good idea to check that. And my favorites, these are actually Cuprian tourmalines from Mozambique. When we think about Cuprian tourmalines, we always think of those really bright blues and greens or the typical index color. But purples or pinks are quite commonly seen. Most of these colors are treated, heat treated, to turn into blue and green. So which one do you prefer, an untreated pink, purple, or treated blue? And because it goes under the current most of the time, there isn't much of a difference in pricing either. So that's where we are with colors. I can talk about all sorts of different colors and color stones, but I guess it's a good stop here because with these beautiful stones and understanding of what kind of alternatives we have out there, I'm going to say very good and thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have. And you can reach me at that email address or the website anytime. Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you.